Hello and welcome to episode 78 of the Alfa Romeo Driver Podcast, brought to you by the Alfa Romeo Owners Club. I'm Guy Swarbrick, and with me to discuss the upcoming Alfa Romeo Championship season and look back at last year is Championship Coordinator Andy Robinson. Good afternoon, Andy.
Good afternoon, Guy. Nice to speak to you.
And you. So this is our kind of regular now catch up on what happened last season. And obviously we had your feature in the magazine in the February issue, looking back at last season.
Yeah.
But I know we have quite a few listeners to the podcast who don't necessarily read the magazine. So before we start talking about some of the exciting things that are going to be happening this season, I thought it was probably worth just a look back on last season, because it had some interesting ups and downs, didn't it?
It did, yes. Yeah, the main thing is we, for the first time in about 4 years, we had a reduction in grid numbers, and that was
right.
A, unexpected, B, not the direction we need to be going in. So that was, we had a very northern biased, most of our drivers are based south of Watford, or at least, travelling up to the likes of Croft and Anglesey is a long trek. It's no excuse, really. I mean, but it is a factor. It was a factor, undoubtedly.
Yeah, and they're both lovely circuits, but
yeah, they are. Yes,
they're a long way from Guildford,
indeed, or Chichester.
yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, that was the main worry. I mean, it wasn't just us. The Classic Alpha Challenge had the same problem, nearly as big a reduction in numbers as we had.
And I guess some of that is, it's the pool of drivers that the championship has, but it also pretty much reflects the population of the UK, doesn't it? So presumably it's as much of a challenge for any organiser to get drivers who are primarily based in the south to go to Croft and Anglesey.
Yeah, I think that's true. It just seemed more marked for us last season, and obviously we've been analysing why that was. And we have a calendar this year that we can't make that excuse because it's very good.
Yeah.
We've been doing a lot of promotion in between. Classic car show, race retro, full-page adverts in Autosport. I'm doing regular newsletters online for people and so on, drivers and supporters. Anyway, we're jumping forward now, aren't we? You were talking about last season. We had some amazing races. We started off at Silverstone National. And the commentator said it was the best Alfa race they'd seen for years.
Yeah.
Said it was fantastic. We were eulogizing over it. And then we go to Croft and we have like 12 entries, which is, it's very frustrating. Racing clubs run on very narrow margins. So the numbers are important. One or two on the grid is the difference between breaking even and making a loss. And we can't go on making a loss. So we had a decent grid at Brands, of course. And not too bad at Alton.
Cracking race at Brands.
Yes.
Ted Pearson in the Mito would have walked away with it, but for mechanical problems, I think.
Yeah, well, he had fuel surge problems, yeah. And that's not to underestimate Scott Austin. Scott's
indeed,
top driver from, won championships in the 90s and things. But yes, that was some great racing.
And then an unfortunate end to the season at Croft, because, again, cracking first race and everything. Croft.
Alton Park, yeah.
Alton Park. And mixed weather, which is, I know it's awkward for the drivers, but it does make it interesting for those spectators brave enough to go out in the rain.
Well, yeah. Yeah, no, it was an excellent race. And hopefully it's a forerunner of the season. But it was disappointing to lose out because we were last on the meeting and they were running out of time following the accident in the other race. So, but they get a refund of part of that off their next entry fee.
Okay.
I suppose it's a little bit of compensation.
Yeah. Unless you were within one race's points of moving up a place or two, I guess.
I suppose, yeah. But I don't think it made a lot of difference to the outcome. But you never know, it could have done.
So this season, we suffered from smaller grids last year. From what I hear, there's a potentially bumper entry for this year.
Well, there's 28 registered drivers so far. Yeah. Having said that, we can't be complacent about that because we're an unusual championship in that from a 750 Motor Club's point of view, if they've got a championship or a series with 28 registered drivers, they would expect to have 22 or 23 at every race.
Right.
For some reason, last year we had 38 registered drivers and we averaged 17 on the grid, or just under 17.
It'll be interesting to see if some of that was just geography.
Some of it was. Other people say, well, I'm just going to do that meeting and that meeting. Right. In other words, they don't treat it as a championship, in effect.
Yeah.
A series is just a set of individual races, which is what, say, the classic Alfa, for example, is. Yeah. There's no points, there's no champion, there's just, some individual events where people, finish wherever they finish. But so what we really need is more people to treat it as a championship. Yeah. And that's what we're hoping, obviously.
And I think we talked a couple of years ago, there's some criteria about when something can no longer be considered a championship. It has to be a series.
Well, the Motorsport UK used to have a rule that if you average less than 16 on, starters across the season, you run the risk of getting a yellow card, as they call it, a warning to redress that. And we did actually get one of those. I only found out subsequently because the BRSCC didn't tell me at the time. But we obviously knew we needed to improve that. And if that had happened again, we would have been in the BRSCC's hands at the time. They might have just said, well, forget it. You just got enough of cars. That's the end of that. Or they could have downgraded it to a series of perhaps 4 races or something. But we did a big driver survey at the time and picked out key priorities for our drivers, one of which was cost. And we race with the 750 Motor Club now as a result. And their race entry fees are way, way less than other clubs. I was talking to an MG racer over the last winter. He said, if I come and race in Alfa, what are your entry fees like? I said, well, they're around 400 quid for a weekend. He said, I pay double that for racing his MGB, So he didn't actually change to Alfa in the end. But so that was a key thing for us, and that seemed to work. We tried to get better organized, be more welcoming. And, our grid steadily went up from that point, 2018, up to 2021. Yeah. Just last year, suddenly had a bit of a setback. But.
So we'll talk about some of those 28 entries in a minute. Right. Calendar. We've said the calendar is now predominantly southern. So what does the calendar look like for this season?
Well, we started at Silverstone National, again, as we did last year on 30th of April. So that's just 3 and a bit weeks away now. Yeah. But we go to Cadwell Park. That is, northern based. We have Festival Italia in August. We don't have a Snetterton race, which is unusual. We're back at Silverstone Grand Prix circuit at the end of October, possibly sharing a grid there. We're not sure about that because of the cost of hiring the Grand Prix circuit, but we'll see how that goes. We're at Alton Park and we're at Donington Grand Prix circuit in June. So, we can't grumble about that. That's a pretty good calendar. It's nicely spaced. We don't have, meetings too close together. As if something goes wrong with your car or whatever you need, if you race the following week, it's very difficult to get it ready in time. So it's nicely spaced and some very good circuits to race on. So fingers crossed, that goes all right. So we do have what has staggered me about the entry this year is the modified class. Right. We have 12 modified class entries, including some really interesting cars. For example, Scott Austin and Andy Page were the main modified runners last year. They're both back, of course. We have Riccardo Lascelles come back to racing after a gap of a few years, and he's racing the Mito 404 that we mentioned earlier. Ted Pearson raced at Brands. Although I gather they're talking about converting the mechanics of that into a 4C. I don't know if they've actually done that. I must.
There's a feature in the April issue of the magazine that shows some of the early build and talks about Jamie's plans for that car. Yeah. It's certainly going to start off as the Mito, and it'll be interesting to see whether he decides to build another 2-litre TBI engine to go into the 4C and leave the Mito. But I think he's frustrated a little bit with how the Mito behaves as a race car.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I must give him a ring. Actually, I spoke to him a few weeks ago, but I'm going to need to catch up with him. But Riccardo has entered every race meeting. So that's a good sign. Yep. Barry McMahon's back in his 156 mainly. They've also upgraded his Giulietta with a bigger turbo, and that's putting in some fast times in testing, I gather. So, although I don't know who will race it, whether he will or Stacey Dennis had an outing in it last year.
Yeah. Paul drove it as well, didn't he? Paul Plant drove it.
Yes. He raced it to Alton, yeah.
Yeah.
So hopefully we might see that. Mike Hilton, of course, his car's had a real makeover this winter.
Yeah, it looks gorgeous.
It looks fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. We'll keep that one as a surprise for people who turn up on the 30th of April, but almost worth the ticket price alone. That
absolutely, yeah. And it's not just the livery; it's changed. There's been a lot of improvements under the skin to improve the performance. He had. Bianco guys, he had a bit of a list there they had to implement.
You're going to want to desperately change the performance of the car when you put it on pole the first time out, aren't you? Yeah. I know there were special circumstances with the damp track and the traction control, but it did look a pretty formidable beast even in the previous state.
Yeah, and even though he couldn't get it out of third gear. So.
Yeah, I can see why you'd want to fix that one.
Yeah. Jamie Thwaites has bought a TCR Giulietta. He races lots of other things, so how often we'll see him, I'm not sure yet.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed we will. And Ian Stapleton is back in his monstrous GTV6 3.8 litre supercharged thing that looks like something out of Robot Wars, but it's incredibly fast. So.
That's the one with a 916 grille on the front of a Alfetta GTV6, is it the one?
Yes.
Yes,
it's the most unusual car.
Yeah.
But last time we saw it, it was in an invitation race at Brands at Festival Italia. This is about 5 years ago, I think. He trounced a lot.
Yeah.
Some really hot Ferraris included. And the other one of interest is it probably won't be ready for the first race, although he's trying hard. That's Richard Ford's Giulia Veloce, which is, I know it's got the cage in it now, and he's got various bits he's doing to it. So, and he's very determined character. I'm sure we'll see it as soon as he can possibly get it ready. And then we have a GTV 3.2 Marks Geggs. Daniel Woods bought Ron Davidson's old 3.2 litre 164. Keith Waite, of course, raced nearly every year since 1983, whatever it was, in his 75. And Gareth Haywood, the supercharged GTV that Roger Evans and then Graham Seeger used to race and won the championship in 2015, and Graham did. So
that would probably be one of the most diverse classes of almost any form of motorsport in the UK, I would have thought.
It's incredible, isn't it?
From 4-seater 164 is an incredible range.
And a 75, and everything in between, I'll be cock a hoop if they all show up, and we'll just get some amazing.
We know where they'll all show up. They'll all show up at Brands Festival Italia.
Yeah. Well, I hope they. I know some of them intend to do a lot on most of the rounds. So that's the sort of head of the field. But then we've got the V6 class, 5 entries so far, all of whom raced last year. Power Trophy, we have 4 entries, which is interesting, including an Alfa Sud and a 33, Tom Waite, Keith's son Tom. Emma Karbacki, that's Paul Plant's partner, has entered a Giulietta 1.4 turbo.
Okay. So is that Paul's development car?
Yeah. And Simon McPhee has just entered his Fiat Punto Abarth. And we had some cracking races from him and his brother, circulating about 6 inches apart at speeds. With
one wheel cocked on every time they went round Druids,
Yeah. Twin Spark Cup, we've got 7 entries, all of whom are returning drivers, apart from one, which is my son, actually. he's having a go in a 156. He's telling everybody he's going to be last, so he's very green. But
that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
With telling everybody you're going to be last.
Yes, well, it is. I was told my very first race, the grand old age of 59, that I was going to come last. And I did. But you start to learn as you go, and so I'm hoping he'll do well. We could do more with more Twin Spark Cup entries, certainly. So
I was just going to say, when we talked, I think it was last year, when we were talking about Paul's development Giulietta and the plans for a 1.4 multi-air class to kind of transition from Twin Spark.
Yeah,
it looks as though the Twin Spark numbers are on the decline because the cars aren't there anymore, and all the reasons that we thought they might.
Well, there are still cars available, but yes, the attraction seems to have dimmed somehow.
Yeah,
but that does emphasize the importance of moving forward on new developments. So I hope we will see. I mean, Emma's a former champion.
Yeah.
she's a great driver. So it'd be good to see that car on track.
But I think the last time I spoke to Paul, he had 5 or 6 people who'd expressed an interest in a car of that kind of build.
Yes, he has. Yeah.
So it's a little bit disappointing that there's only one at this stage.
Yeah, it's a step forward to have one. So fingers crossed that happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
One person we haven't seen anything from yet is Andrew Borg, last year's champion. I'm told he may have problems getting a budget together, so I don't know whether we'll see him or not, or at least if we do, perhaps not for the whole season. But,
right.
So there are other people interested. Got somebody with a Fiat 127. I'm in touch with the Alfa Owners Club as well to say, did you know?
Yeah.
They haven't come back to me yet. But my youngest son's got an Abarth, and he knows guys down at the local Fiat dealers who race. So why don't they race with us?
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, we'll see how that goes. But I'm sure there'll be more registrations coming. Dave Messenger, for example, we knew would registered yesterday. So
right.
It's good to see him back. So I've got everything crossed, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, better to get 22 out of 28 than 17 out of 38, I guess.
Indeed.
Over the course of the year. So
absolutely, yeah. That's critical for us. I can't emphasize that enough. Don't want to sound doom and gloom. It's a positive championship. We love Alphas. We're committed to.
Well, and as you said of the Silverstone race, I mean, it can be absolutely cracking racing.
Yeah.
Two in one often, because you get a really good twin spark race circulating behind a really good modified Power Trophy V6 race up front,
like we did at Alton. Yeah. Really close battle in the twin sparks. So 4 of them really close together. So that's how we're set up. We've got other issues to deal with during the season, like tires.
Right.
We've still got Yokohama sponsorship, but the tire we've been using in the Twin Spark Cup for the last few years is no longer going to be available after this season. In fact, some of their championships and series have already had to switch to Toyo or someone else because they've been cutting back on their involvement. So we got to test new tires in anticipation of 2024. But that, we'll pull all that in as we go along. So we made some rule changes as well, which we hope.
Okay.
We eliminated the drop scores rule last year. And I think we certainly lost a couple of drivers because of that. So we have reintroduced it. Any driver of the 12 races can drop any 2 of their choice.
Presumably you dropped the drop scores to try and encourage people to do all the rounds. Yeah. All the rounds, and the law of unintended consequences said it had exactly the opposite effect. Yeah.
People will say, well, I can't do that round because I've got an important family commitment, or I'm visiting my family in New Zealand or somewhere, and therefore, what's the point in doing the others? You know what I mean? So it's one of those things that, comes and goes, but hopefully that'll help. We've lifted the 4-cylinder restriction on the Power Trophy as well. I don't think that'll make much difference, actually, but...
No, I don't think Roger will get his V8 Giulietta down to the power to weight ratio, will he?
Well, if he still had it, he wouldn't. He has sold it.
He has sold it because it's been for sale for a while, hasn't it?
Yeah, it was, but he sold it a few months ago. We haven't heard from the guy who bought it. He was trying to persuade him to race it. And there were some indications that he might, but we haven't seen the fruits of that yet.
So just picking up on the Giulia, because I guess that's a car that's a bit of a turning point, isn't it? Up until now, given that they were relatively high retail price and relatively new, there wasn't going to be a large stock of cars suitable for racing. But that chassis has always looked like it's got huge potential.
Yeah.
So any other murmurings of Giulia entries, or is it just the one at this stage?
The other one that's on the horizon is Barry McMahon's preparing a Giulia Quadrifoglio.
Okay.
I'm told that they're aiming for about 750 horsepower for that. So he may take it elsewhere rather than...
I was going to say, was that a brick car project that might end up in the Alfa Championship rather than the other way around?
Possibly, yes. That's how it's looking.
Yeah.
That's fantastic development.
750 horsepower is enough, isn't it?
You would think so, yes. Oh dear. So, I don't know of any others at the moment, but I know Richard Ford's well on with his build. So he had a bit of a delay getting the roll cage in, but that's now done, and he's got lots of other bits to fit to it. So that'll be interesting to see whether it's I hope it's the thin end of a very big wedge, but we'll have to see. As I say, price plays a part in that. So yeah, I'm looking forward. I'm always optimistic.
Yeah, well, as I say, I think the one thing we know is we'll have good racing. When we've had good racing with relatively small grids.
Yeah.
So let's hope we get some bigger grids. And
I mean, last year we, like you say, Brands was superb.
Yeah.
Right through the field. Bolton was brilliant. Cadwell's always a challenge.
Yes. Cadwell's the only circuit we've had to permanently remove from the virtual racing series because
is it really? I didn't know that.
It was just carnage.
Yes, I can imagine. There's no sand or gravel anywhere.
No, and the run down the hill it's just terrifying.
Well, yeah, and I mean I know to my cost because I went off at the whatever it's called, the Devil's Elbow.
Yeah,
I hit the barrier head on. Made a right mess of myself in the car at the time. It's very, if you win there, you've done well.
Yeah. I think I went a couple of years ago to an ARCA round, and there was a Fiesta Junior race that started off with 5 cars, I think.
Oh, yeah.
2 of them hit each other on the grid.
Yes.
Then I think there were 2 running at the end, but they were half a lap apart. And I thought that's probably about as safe as Cadwell gets. 2 cars, half a lap apart.
Yeah.
But fantastic as a spectator.
Oh, it is. I mean, it's a great circuit up and down. I mean, it's so narrow. That's because it's built for bikes, really. But I know when I was racing, if I was lapping somebody and they were in the middle of the circuit, say going up the back straight, you just have to not shut your eyes, but just grit your teeth and go for the gap and hope it works out. There's not much space. Anyway, so good calendar. We've had terrific racing, so we just my only concern, it's like a business plan, isn't it? The first priority for any organization is to survive.
Yeah.
A bit like Maslow's hierarchy as well.
Yeah.
Down at the bottom rung.
Although I think by definition, anybody involved in motorsport is self-actualizing, aren't they? They're right at the top. They've covered everything else.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, mine's right at the bottom.
Yeah, that's the difference between running the series and driving in it.
Indeed,
opposite ends of the pyramid.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
You talked earlier about some of the efforts you've made over the winter to promote the championship and a couple of the events you've attended. Tell me a bit more about that.
We had a great event at Race Retro, loads of interest. At least one car was sold as a result, and lots of people interested in the championship. Same at the Classic Car Show. So we just hope those things trickle through to people's consciousness and they actually think, why don't I race an Alfa? Instead of some other inferior car,
And I guess the other thing we talked about probably the first time we did a podcast together was the move from the BRSCC to the 750 Motor Club. And you already said today that was driven partly by the race entry fees. And I know it wasn't only that.
No, it wasn't.
But a couple of years in, how's that relationship going?
Well, I'm very happy with it. I mean, they run a tight ship. They don't carry loads of overheads like some other racing clubs do. And that filters through to the drivers. We get on really well with the team. They've been very patient with us over last year, where the numbers weren't good at some of the meetings. No, they're great people to work with and supportive of us beyond what I would have expected even.
So were you on their stand at Race Retro? Because I know you were at the NEC, or was that an independent?
No, we were on their stand, yeah. So, they've been very positive. Previously, if we were at the Autosport show or wherever, we'd have to pay the RSCC to be on their stand. We don't have to pay to be on the 750 Motor Club. We also did the Motorsport Days live event. It looks like we have one new driver at least from that. So
for people who haven't been to that event, which includes myself, although I've nearly got there a couple of times, tell us a little bit more about that event, because it's an interesting approach to recruiting new drivers, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Basically, again, via the 750 Motor Club, because that gets us a financial saving. We do have to pay for that. But you get half a garage, and each day you get 5 track sessions over the 2 days. We had 2 cars there. We had a V6 and a Prince Park, and they were coming and going all day with different people. You can either go as a passenger to experience, or you can drive the car, say passenger seats in, with some tuition or help from someone, an existing driver.
Yeah.
So Graham Seeger was doing that along with Stacey Dennis, helping people, who hadn't really raced a race car before. you just have to plug away at all these things. It all raises the profile.
So if we have some potential drivers out there who are starting to put some ideas together, when's Motorsport Live this year? Back end of the season, isn't it? Typically?
Yeah, it is November time usually.
Yeah. So what would they have to do when they turn up for that? Do they have to bring helmets and overalls, and do they have to have an ARDS test?
No, you don't. All you need is a helmet, basically. And
right.
You have to attend a driver's briefing, sign on, and you get get safety briefings and all the rest, how to act on the track and so on. You don't need a race suit or any of the other stuff, and you don't need an ARDS test. No. So it's a decent crash helmet's pretty much it. But, you get all that information in advance anyway.
Yeah. No, I'm just thinking about people who might not even ask for the information because they assume that there's there's a high point of entry.
Yeah, no, not at all. It's slightly different if you're going out to drive it or if you're going as a passenger.
Yeah.
But you still have to attend the same briefings. That's all that's mandatory, and have a decent helmet, basically. So
we'll have to give people a reminder once the details of this year are known. Yeah. We'll stick it in our e-newsletter.
It's a good way to get a toe in the water.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, if somebody wants to test a car, they can contact Revs Italia. I have a couple of V6s available. Bianco always have cars ready for people to test. Just ring them up and ask. And, it will cost a bit, I guess, but which Motorsport Days doesn't. But if you're keen,
if you're keen, it's going to cost you anyway, isn't it? At some point,
of course, it's not a cheap hobby,
No,
but it isn't as expensive as I keep repeating to people. People think it's like you got to have $100,000 or something. It's nothing like that.
Brilliant. Well, it's been a pleasure as always, Andy, and I look forward to seeing you at Silverstone on the 30th.
Yeah, looking forward to it. We'll be doing a preview on the website and stuff in the next couple of weeks. Look forward to seeing you there.
That's all we have time for this week. A couple of things before we talk about the next episode. Firstly, Rosie Hodson, one of our guests on the last podcast, was due to get married today. Hopefully everything went well, and we wish Rosie and Tom all the best for the future. The other thing is a reminder that next Sunday marks the first major club event of the year at the Imperial War Museum at Duxford in Cambridgeshire. Tickets were still available at time of recording, but it is online ticket sales in advance only. What could be more disappointing than trying to buy them on your phone in the queue to enter the venue, only to discover they're sold out? We'll be back in 2 weeks' time on Sunday the 23rd of April, with a roundtable looking back at Spring Alpha Day, and my first thoughts on the PHEV Tonale and the facelifted Giulia and Stelvio. Episode 79 will be available to download from 1:30 p.m. from Google Podcasts, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, the club's website, and everywhere else good podcasts are found. Until then, stay safe.